All right, everybody. So we had COVID, or we have COVID. We have the protests. And now, the final sign that the world is ending. This is Home at the Movies' last episode on Bored and Annoyed. So I'm sure he'll be back once in a while to pop in and say hi and talk about things he needs to talk about. But Home, how does it feel knowing this is it? This is the one.
It's bittersweet. It's weird. I think you're just kind of rebranding, though, is all you're doing. It's kind of like when Power Rangers went from Mighty Morphin to Zeo. Like that's what you're doing right now.
Yeah. The show will still exist in a different form, I think. Um, you know, uh, I'm not going anywhere, so if anybody has messages they'd like to pass along to Home, feel free to kind of send them my way. Same social media stuff. All that is still here. So Home still exists on this planet. You can follow him and tweet him at Home at the Movies, or is it Home at Movies? Is that right? Home
I
at Movies.
honestly can't remember. I tried logging
Yeah.
into Twitter because I refused to put it on my phone, and I have forgotten my password and I cannot find my account. So
Well, then just send it to me and I'll let him know. But
yeah,
but
it's
yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, before we kind of hop into this, first off, let's see here. We've got downright nerdy podcast already commenting. Gonna miss you, buddy. I'm surprised anyone's gonna miss you. I personally, I don't understand why. And then Paul says, "Let's go." So yeah, let's go. But first, you had brought up, you kind of want to talk about the happenings in the world. I know we're supposed to be a fun show, but
Yeah.
yeah, you wanted to say something, so go for it.
I yeah, I don't I not really planned. I think anybody who watches this show knows that we don't do much planned, except for the topic. But
Right.
yeah, I've been pretty quiet on social media about this, and it's it's disturbing what's happening. I don't. I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't think that the protests are disturbing. But it's just kind of a crazy and insane time that we live. And I really do support the people who are looking for change in a system that clearly seems broken to me. That's kind of where I stand. I mean, clearly, if you watch the video, everybody knows what I'm talking about. George Floyd's death, it's a horrific thing that happened. And I mean, I think you can make a real, honest to God argument that there's a flawed system there. I don't think I think anybody who's reasonable would see that video and be horrified. And I think anybody who's reasonable will probably say, yeah, there are things we should probably change within that system because it seems like there is a pattern that's happening. I can't say that I support looting, but I definitely support peaceful protest. And it's just, you know, it it's just I don't think I've ever seen a time like this before in my 35 years of existing, and it's sad, yet there's things that are heartening. It is nice to see people getting together and being peaceful for a good cause. That is nice. Um,
Yeah. Well,
so
it's what really is funny but not about this is um, the George Floyd thing in it of itself. I feel like everyone kind of agreed on, or fully
yes,
agreed on. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And then you're like, okay, well, everyone's going to agree on this one, right? But
yep,
then everybody's tearing each other's heads off on social media
yeah.
within
Well,
like a week.
it's
And yeah, that's what bothers me about it. I mean,
yeah,
outside of obviously the poor guy's death and now the subsequent deaths that have happened
yeah,
since his death as
yeah. Both
well.
there are both been yeah. It's interesting because we have like two separate conversations that are happening, the police brutality, and then we have the talks of protests that lead to riots and looting, and it's almost like you can link them, but they are almost separate.
And,
Police
and you
brutality
cut
is because
out.
they're. Did
You
I cut
cut
out
out for
there?
a second. Yeah, you
Okay.
said you can link them, but
You can link them, but they are two separate things, but they are linked in that like police brutality actually sort of folds back in on the protesting one because there are enough videos of people being peaceful protesters who have been, shot in the face with a flash grenade, or an old man get pushed down, or like very clearly unwarranted, and I feel like rights violations of civil liberties, the right to assemble. I mean, it's insane, and I think that's sort of the point where I'm like, if you didn't believe that police brutality and sort of like this general sort of idea of like the police kind of feel like they're immune, if you didn't believe it was a thing after you saw the video with George Floyd, I really think you should probably now, based on how bad cops have reacted during peaceful protests. I think there's enough evidence there that something should be done about this system. I don't know what should be done. Some people are throwing out defund the police. You know, I'm kind of to the point where I'm like, okay, my thought was like maybe they need more funding because we need to fund for body cams, and they need to be mandatory, and we need to now increase standards as far as like what we can allow, and testing as far as like the people's mental states to become a cop. My thought was like maybe more money there, but people are making the argument maybe police are doing things that are outside of their jurisdiction that maybe should fall on like social workers or something like that. And maybe if that was the case, maybe there would be less pressure on cops. I don't know. And I would never go as far as to say that all cops are bad. I don't think that you can make that argument. But as a
Well,
system, maybe we need reform.
well, I mean,
No, not maybe, we do.
yeah, well, I mean, here's the problem as I see it is that we don't have RoboCop, right? And anytime you have a group of thousands of people who are people, I mean, everyone's fallible, correct?
Sure.
Anytime you have thousands of people out there, there are going to be some who are fucking assholes. Now, to me, I think that they need to be held more accountable when they fucking act like assholes, and they need to know that they're going to be held accountable when they're assholes. But
Right.
this isn't the last time that a cop is going to kill an unarmed suspect. So I'm nervous about the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like,
Well,
you know,
it's tough too because I had a debate with somebody about the idea of looting and rioting, and I was like, can I empathize? Absolutely. Because these are people who I think if you look at the stance, there was the Colin Kaepernick stance of kneeling during this, and during the national anthem, and you can really make the argument there was an actual effort for peaceful protests. And I can understand the thought process behind, we tried it. It didn't work, and people just being pissed. I can understand it. Does it mean that I condone like destruction of property or theft? Not really. I tend not to think in sort of like, I tend not to think that just because you're angry, it justifies your actions. I think that's a dangerous precedent to set, though I do
well,
understand the outrage.
do we want them to be treated like adults who are responsible for their own actions? You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's where I'm at. And honestly, dude, I don't even know if these are the same groups of people. It seems to
No,
me like there's a few different groups of people here that
yep.
are all have their own thing in mind that they're trying to accomplish. And like
Yes.
the fucking the people leaving pallets of bricks in the street.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it's like you're obviously a complete piece of shit for doing that. I saw a video of a black woman running up to a car with a brick, and she like basically threw it at the guy in the car, and she must have seen him handing it to somebody, and she's like, "What the fuck are you giving him this for?" You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, what are you
Yep.
doing? And it was like
Yeah.
a white kid with a mask on, whatever. But like, clearly, there's a lot going on here.
Yes, it's a very complex situation. I don't think we're going to have all the answers as to what all of was happening, because I mean there have been reports of white supremacists coming in here. There's been reports of Antifa. There's been reports of I mean, clearly there are just people who are, and I've
Assholes.
experienced. Well, they're clearly just people who are just looting because they're opportunists.
Oh
I
yeah.
think there are some people who maybe they do care, but I think just a selfish act, right? It's the act of sort of, I'm going to gain from the world burning right now.
Sure. Oh yeah, there's plenty of that.
And I mean, there's something to be said about, people have been locked in their homes for basically 3 months. And
Oh hell
I think
yes.
that is part of it. I mean, obviously too, just seeing a man die in the streets the way that George Floyd died. I don't know that we've ever really had that kind of video evidence before. I mean, and the things that he was saying when he's dying, like asking for his, I mean, that just like, it just makes me mad even thinking about it. It's just horrific.
I would agree. Watching that was the worst one I've ever seen of these police brutality. None of them are good.
No,
But obviously, but watching that one for like 8, I mean, you couldn't even wrap your head around what the guy was like. There's no excuse except for pure malice, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just evil. So
It's just, yeah, it is. It's pure evil, and the look of indifference on his face while he's doing it is just, it's just horrifying.
Right.
It's horrifying. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't really talked about it. I talked about protests with a couple people, but I feel like it's like I never really even got to talk about the actual inciting incident, this horrific thing that happened. And I don't know. It's fucked up. I do think we need change. I don't know what shape that takes, whether it's defund or whatever. But I mean, to me, it just feels like we can't continue on the way that we're going because there's a clear pattern. So that's how I feel.
yeah, I mean, something needs to change. We can't have our country tearing each other apart every 3 to 6 to 9 to 12 months,
That's the other thing too, is like just societally, it's a responsible thing to do because yeah, you can't have a society that's at its own throat every 6 months because some innocent person was killed. You just,
Right.
it makes no, take out the fucking moral stance. It just doesn't make pragmatic sense to have that be a part of your society.
I would agree. So yeah, that's us solving the world's problems. I mean, we should just send this to CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and just have them play it. It'll all be solved, right?
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
I'm sure
Yeah.
everybody will love my
Yes.
indifferent stance.
Yes,
But-
I'm sure nobody will have different opinions based on what network they're watching the stance on. You know what I mean?
I do want to say one last thing, which is understand that I'm an individual, Jackson is an individual, and you're not always going to agree with everything that comes out of one person's mouth. It's just not going to happen. So try and maybe hear people out, at least listen. Maybe try
Right.
listening, because I think we're losing the ability to listen.
Yeah, listening is not one of our strongest suits these days. And yeah, you know what, Home? I actually forgot to hit the record button. So what I'm gonna do here on Audacity, because this is my new foray into this, I'm gonna hit the record button now.
Okie dokie.
And this is the 100th episode of Bored and Annoyed. And rather than start with the typical start, I figured we would take a look back at our first intro of this show ever. Do you remember what movie we reviewed?
Wasn't it Annihilation?
It was Annihilation. So welcome to the show. I am Jackson.
I'm home with the movies.
And welcome to Bored and Annoyed.
So we're recording now?
Yeah, we've been recording this whole time so I could watch the levels.
Good thing I didn't say anything too. That you could blackmail me with. But.
Hi, I'm Alex and I'm bored.
And I'm Jackson and I'm annoyed.
And welcome to the first ever episode of Bored and Annoyed, the podcast.
You might want to cut the podcast.
I probably will. Bored and Annoyed.
So yeah, that wasn't messy or anything,
How is it that it's basically 2 years ago, and how is it that I feel like I sound like a child in that clip?
It's only been 2 years. Your balls finally dropped in your early
Yeah.
30s,
I don't understand that.
But
podcast.
I feel like we should just start. And by the way, there's bonus content. Our thoughts on the whole riots thing is on YouTube for you people that are listening to the post recording. But anyways, yeah. So I think we should start by just talking about that a little bit. When we started, we had one of these Blue Yeti mics. We were sitting at a coffee table. You were on the couch. I was on my chair, had no idea what we were doing. I'm shocked that you left that in the episode, by the way, that first episode, but I'm kind of glad you did now. And it's kind of funny to listen to that because I remember everyone I've told to listen to the show to this day, I'm like, don't start with the first episode. But I feel like every podcast has that same, story. So
I think, especially if it's your first podcast, I think once you've been around mics, been around sort of like how a show is structured, I think you figure out the ropes as you go. But yeah, your first podcast, your first episode on your first podcast, oof, that shit is rough.
Yes, and that was rough. And it just so happened to probably be one of the most confusing, weird movies that we watched the entire time we've done this show together.
Right. Well, and we also figured eventually that maybe we shouldn't spend an hour and a half on one movie.
Yeah.
Because we'll eventually just beat it into the ground.
Yes. Yes. But if you want to laugh, go back and listen to that episode and watch Annihilation, by the way. Great movie.
I love the
great movie.
Love the
yes. movie. But anyways, as far as news is concerned, I believe the big two pieces of news I saw this week were, and maybe it was only one. I saw the one thing I sent you, which I think is hilarious, that Hereditary guy, Ari Aster, is looking at, he wants to make a 4-hour horror comedy, which honestly feels like a troll job, and it actually makes me laugh, and I kind of hope that actually happens, just for the hilariosity of that happening.
Well, I'm actually truly looking forward to this because I like Ari Aster. I don't love his movies, but it's one of those things where like he's a clear artist, he's got a clear vision, and I always appreciate that. He's sort of one of those people where it's like he is evidence of the auteur theory.
Yes.
And if he's like, hey, I'm gonna branch out and I'm gonna try mixing in a different genre, you bet your fucking ass I'm interested.
And I think he could do a more heavy comedy piece because they're like, especially in Midsummer, I would say that a lot of the stuff written with the douchey character who vapes, of course, was actually pretty goddamn funny. It made me laugh. So
I agree.
He seems to have some comedic timing. If it's going to be 4 hours, I'm assuming it's going to be, he's just not going to cut anything. So it'll be like his dream. But that was one thing. The other thing I saw is that I believe, again, update, it sounds like Nolan is still dead set on releasing Tenet in mid-July, and movie theaters are looking at possibly trying to reopen, depending on what they have to play, in early July. So we'll see.
Yeah. I don't know. I want to go to the movies, but goddamn, like, what's it going to look like? Is it going to be safe? I mean, it's really weird to me because it does feel like at the end of the day, we as Americans have decided that we've had enough of COVID-19 and we're done. And we're just gonna pretend it's not happening anymore.
Part of me just feels like at this point, maybe we should have just ridden the fucking thing out. But that's just me being an asshole, I guess. I don't know. Right. It just seems like we were just, I don't know. Who knows? Yeah,
but I have no idea.
I don't have
the answers.
The latest stats show apparently that the places that were hot spots at first aren't having the growth in cases that the places that weren't at first are. So I don't know what that, I'm not a scientist or epidemiologist or whatever the hell it's called. But maybe that's a good sign. I don't know.
I heard that the people who are asymptomatic are actually much less likely to actually spread it, which is nice. That's actually a bit of good news.
That would be huge, right? Because that was the biggest fear of this whole thing was like this invisible enemy that was around. And even if you felt good, you were still giving it to other people. So, yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
maybe
mean,
there's some
I
good
think
news.
as long as we do masks in public and try social distancing and you don't be a Karen about having to sit at a different booth, I think as those things are okay, I think we might be okay. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Poor Karens, like the real Karens, women
Every
named
time,
Karen.
yes, every time I meet a Karen, I'm like, I internally say, especially if they're a nice person, I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry your name has been co-opted to mean bitch.
yeah, that sucks. That really does. It's too bad. But yeah, that's all I got for news. Hey, can you think of any news? I mean, it's been rough digging up news over the last 3 months, to be honest with you.
No, no, not really. I don't know. There hasn't been a whole lot that's interested me as far as news goes. It's
Right.
been tremendously slow. But that's okay.
So apparently, we have some news for us from Downright Nerdy. The Kingdom series you put me on, I just received the Korean manga graphic novel it's based on. Very excited
Oh,
to read it. I didn't even know that was the
I
case.
didn't know either. Now I'm excited.
Yeah, so I guess there you go. Go read Kingdom now and let me know how it is, Downright. But yeah, anyway, so for our 100th episode, we both picked movies to watch. One was the anime classic Akira, and one was the box office sci-fi bomb John Carter. So I don't know. You want to start with Akira, John Carter? Do you not care? What do you want to do here?
I really I don't care because I have enough to say about both.
Okay.
Do you want to start with John Carter? That's kind of your baby.
Sure, let's get it out of the way. I want to just get my hatred for you out of the way now because I'm sure
Okay.
it's gonna come, you know. Yeah, so I watched it last night. Most movies that I get real excited about, and just to give you a little background on this, I went and saw John Carter the day it came out by myself in a theater that was probably like two or three other guys who were by themselves, right? It was clear just from looking at the audience in the theater the day I went and saw it that this was not going to be good. You know what I mean? This was going to be a bomb. No matter how good the movie was, it was going to be a box office bomb. So I sat there. The first funny story about this actually is I had a pair of Oakleys on, and it was a 3D showing. And I always put my Oakleys up or my sunglasses up on my forehead, right? So I go into the theater, I grab the 3D glasses, I also put those on my forehead. And my first 5 to 10 minutes of the movie, the experience was just dreadful because I had accidentally taken my Oakleys and brought them down over my eyes. So it was like, this is the worst 3D I've ever seen. Everything's super blurry. I can't see anything. But anyways, figured that out, solved that problem. And I left that theater. To this day, I would say it was one of the most joyful, exciting movie theater experiences that I've ever had.
Wow.
Because I did not go in expecting anything from this movie. I didn't know anything about it outside of the trailers.
Okay.
It's a sci-fi movie, so I'm going to go see it no matter how cheesy and dumb it looks in the trailer, I guess.
Sure.
Kind of like a Mortal Engines would have been, right? It was
Right.
like that feeling, right? And I saw this. This was
You throw that out there like that. You throw
This-
that out there like that. It makes a whole lot more sense.
well,
This is the guy who liked Mortal Engines.
I now
Makes a
hold
lot of
on.
sense.
Go listen to it because I did think it was bad, but
Okay,
I
that's
had
true.
fun.
That's true.
But this one I don't think is bad. I actually think that this is the closest thing, and this is a little hyperbole because I'm sure you'll be able to throw out a couple examples that probably are, just as close, maybe just as good, whatever. But this is the closest thing to the original Star Wars trilogy type of movie, world building, character, stuff. I really enjoyed this. I still think it's an A plus to this day. Every time I turn it on, I watch it and I love it. I enjoy everything about it outside of, Taylor Kitsch's acting. I don't think he's very good as an actor, but I'm able to overlook that. And that goes for Taylor Kitsch. Sorry, bud. Even like in the Waco show where he plays David Koresh, I just don't
Yeah.
think he's that great. I just don't. But
I was going to say, I saw him in the Waco show, and I actually think he's good. I think So we've got sort of your perspective on this. My
Yes.
history with John Carter is didn't see it in theaters. I waited until I think it was like 25 or 2015, 2016 to see it for the first time.
Okay.
Uh, I found it to be tremendously boring. Not a bad movie, just a very boring movie.
Okay.
This was my second viewing of it now, and I still think it's a boring movie. But I now have I have glimpses of brilliance within it,
Sure.
that I can see. But I also can now see, I'm able to maybe articulate a little bit better as to what I see as the problems that don't work for me as a viewer.
Okay.
This is, and I think some of it is just the fact that, like, okay, so Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote this book, John Carter of Mars, or I don't know if that's what it's called.
It
but,
is.
he wrote this book. It's very much a precursor to things like Star Wars. So culturally,
I'm sorry. It's a Princess of Mars, the first
oh,
one.
Princess. Okay.
Yeah.
So he writes this book. It's very much a precursor to Star Wars. We're exposed to a lot of the tropes that Edgar Rice Burroughs had established through Star Wars. So culturally, we've already kind of been here, at least as far as the cinema is concerned. And so it reminds me a lot of okay, so the Ghost in the Shell movie from a few years ago.
Sure.
It reminds me very much of that, where Ghost in the Shell, the anime, inspired The Matrix. And The Matrix was the thing where, like, everybody's like, "Oh shit, this is crazy." And then when Ghost in the Shell comes out, it's like, "Oh, well, we've been here before. We've done
Feels
this."
like a ripoff of the Matrix,
Yeah.
right?
Even though it's the original, and it's the same thing here. It's the original sort of idea, or like sort of like the inception of these sort of tropes, but now it's seen as sort of like a boring sort of ripoff. But to me, it's an amalgamation of like three things. It's an amalgamation of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and the first Thor movie.
Okay.
Structurally, it's very much like Thor. You've got like this very like realistic world that you live in on Earth, and then you go to a fantastical world out in space. And it's our world and that world at the same time. And it's the juxtaposition between the two. But then it's also like John Carter is very much like there's some Indiana Jones type action with horseback riding and sort of this guy who can, like, kind of rough and tumble kind of guy. And then you've got obviously the Princess of Mars, and you've got this whole war in space, and it's very Star Wars in that aspect.
Sure.
So it's a lot of those things. I think for me, when I looked at it this time, I think the thing that really sticks out is that I never really got interested in John Carter as a character for me to actually be really interested in the journey. And so I think a lot of it comes down to probably the first half an hour, 40 minutes of the movie, because I feel like the midsection might actually be my favorite section. I think that's got the best bits. And it's not like it doesn't have decent actors. Willem Dafoe, Mark Strong,
Yeah.
got Mance Rayder in it.
Yeah.
These, like, there aren't bad actors, though I will argue I think the princess is actually worse than Taylor Kitsch. I think she's far, far worse.
Oh, I disagree 100%.
She's attractive, but she's not a good actress. And I maybe it's not that. Maybe it's that I find her character to be just so boring.
I think that's a fair argument. They definitely, I mean, you're introduced to her and she's kind of like practicing for her little speech that she's going to give her father when he comes
Yeah.
in the room, right? So it's
I
a cheesy character as
Yeah,
well.
I don't think it's a good introduction, I think, to the character.
But here's where I give the movie, and to me, I like to compare this not only with the things you mentioned. By the way, you didn't mention that Superman basically ripped this off too, which is huge. I mean, the entire concept
right,
of
the
Superman.
whole, yeah, right,
Jump,
yeah.
jump,
I can see
jump,
that, yeah, for sure.
So that's something to note as well. But for me, I think about Avatar a lot when I watch this, and I think about like looking at them next to each other. Clearly Avatar, just in its design of its world, is a more impressive thing to look at, right? John
Right.
Carter looks great though. It looks expensive, but it is expensive, so it's hard to give it too much credit for how good it looks. Now, where I give this credit is whereas what's his name? Cameron. It's like, okay, well, let's have our character be have broken legs, and let's name the MacGuffin unobtainium, and let's everything is so
Right.
goddamn on the nose in that
Sure.
movie. That's my
Yeah.
biggest problem with it. Outside of the fact that I think it's too long, it's over bloated. I don't think John Carter's bloated, but
No.
but
No,
thinking about John Carter as a character, what I like about the character is that there's a lot going on there in that first half hour. There is the fact that it's interesting to me that he's a Confederate soldier who doesn't want to be involved in any of this. And essentially tries to get dragged in when he's on Earth, and then he goes to Mars, and obviously there's the metaphorical, Civil War type battle that's happening there. You have the Native American types, which are the Tharks, which, by the way, I think the Tharks are probably my favorite part of the movie. Just the little world building moments with them, with the kids, and
I
the
think
brutality of them is very interesting.
I would argue that the Tharks are the most well fleshed out thing in the entire movie, including John Carter as a character. I think
I think you could make that argument. Sure.
I think that they were the most interesting. I was the most engaged. It was the most fascinating thing to watch. I feel like Helium and the Red Martians that they call them,
Zodanga.
Zodanga, that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Their society didn't make a whole lot of sense. I didn't really get how like they could have a thriving city when the planet was the way that it was. I didn't understand. I didn't understand them. They were
Okay.
just they were very foreign. It was just kind of like they're rich people. It's
Yeah,
like,
and that's the problem. I mean, are we ever going to get that Alita sequel? Right?
Sure.
I mean, there's a lot of shit like that in Alita too, where it's like, okay, well, if I don't get a sequel to this, then there's just so much unanswered stuff, and it's not to make an excuse for the movie, but that wasn't the story that necessarily needed to be told here. As far as
No,
the world building is concerned, I mean. I think that was part of the reason I was like in awe of the film when I first saw it, was because I didn't expect in this Disney movie to have, those eggs didn't hatch, shoot them. They're not strong enough to survive, right? And they just
Sure.
stay back and shoot all the baby eggs that didn't hatch. And then you've got a scene where they bring the eggs back and basically they let them all go, and all the women are just like beating on each other trying to
fighting
get
for
that
the
stuff.
children.
That stuff is great. There's a scene in this where essentially, if you commit a crime, you get a mark, and once you run out of marks, the concept is that you're put to death in the arena or whatever. That was powerful, I thought. I don't understand why, and I understand why people never saw this movie, but I don't understand how there are people out there who act like this movie is a joke. Because first of all, even as if you don't love this movie, that's fine, but the idea that this movie killed Andrew Stanton's career as far as being a live action filmmaker, to me is a joke. I mean,
Right.
come on. It's not, he clearly has talent with directing action. The action is very crystal clear. You can tell everything that's going on, even though you're dealing with two groups of people who kind of look the same, which I would admit is a problem in the movie.
I would say that's probably the problem with the Red Martians. Is it's kind of like, wait, what's going on? I think that's a problem. I've also watched stuff on like the idea of world building and sort of like having a lot of these two terms that you have like in your movie or your text or whatever it is. And they say like it's hard for a viewer or a reader to have like a bunch of terms that they need to learn, especially in like quick succession. So you're like, my Jedek, bar zoom, Django,
Helium,
whatever. Like,
Zodanga, the Therns, right.
there's a lot going on there, and so sometimes you're kind of like the who, the what, and the why, like what's going on. And I think that, and I'm not saying like I'm a dumb viewer, and I'm not saying that this movie needs to dumb itself down, but maybe the pace at which it exposes you to these terms and these things maybe was a little too quick, because I think that the beginning is incredibly fast paced. It's so fucking fast that you're never grounded. And I think I do think honestly it's a problem in not starting the movie off with John Carter and making us sort of like identify with him, find his sort of like, find his ghost or find his lie that he believes in, things like that.
So you think that the whole setup for kind of the twist ending should actually be placed at the beginning? Like
I
like him searching for the amulet, and that should be kind of the narrative thread that the story's told through from his perspective?
I think it might be a better movie if it was actually two movies and the whole Edgar Rice Burroughs part of it comes in the second. Because I
Okay.
think in the first, there's just too much going on. Because I don't, this is not a bloated movie.
No.
In that, like, I feel like everything is there. It's just, I don't know, maybe it is a little, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough because it does feel like it's bloated in that there's so much here that I never felt anchored. And maybe it's just as simple as maybe you just restructure the way that you learn about John Carter. Because I think that something about John that, I mean, obviously, like one of my favorite bits is when like he's like, go, I'll take care of these guys or whatever. And then like he goes and he faces off against whoever it was. I don't even remember who he was fucking fighting, but like it's intercutting with like his family dying.
Yeah, the like the Warhoons or whatever.
Yes.
And there's another example though. I mean, right?
But, yeah.
The only reason I know that is because I love the movie and I've seen it, 8 times or 10 times or however many times it's been.
Sure. So, but I liked that scene, but at the same time, I think sort of like we already knew like his family died, but seeing how they died maybe earlier and maybe having like guilt and PTSD about it earlier on in the movie and making that a little bit of a bigger thread, I think might have made me, because my point is I was never emotionally attached to him as a character, which stopped me from being invested in all of the proceeds or proceeding actions that happened later on.
See, that's interesting because I do not feel that way. I thought the not so subtle but kind of subtle, and that's a really stupid thing to say, I realize. But when he's in jail and he's got the 2 rings on his finger,
Sure.
and basically
Oh, you
he
get
says-
it.
Yeah, and I thought that like really drew me in. Like, okay,
But I
this is a torn up guy, right?
Well, I got that he was torn up, but it's kind of like, why are you torn up? Are you torn up because you feel responsible or just because they're dead? I feel like I needed more there than just, and that's another thing too, where John Carter is kind of an archetypical character. He's kind of like your Wolverine, got a tragic past and feels guilty, loner kind of type, leave me alone. I don't want to get involved.
Sure. Yeah.
That's exactly who he is. And it's like the thing, part of what makes Wolverine interesting is because, yeah, he's got claws and shit, but like he's got a mysterious past. You don't know what happened to him.
Okay.
Here, it was very telegraphed, like, okay, your family died and you're sad. But why are you sad? Did you feel guilty because you left?
Yeah, but that's what you learn, right? That's what you learn in the scene you're talking about, because this whole thing that he says is basically
Right.
like, I was too late once, I won't be again. And then you're like, okay, well, then it was his fault that it happened, or he feels like it was his fault.
Right, but I guess I never felt it, is what I'm saying, and I don't know how you structure that. And then there was another thing too, where like when they found him and they were like, "We need you as part of our cavalry" or whatever, and I'm like, okay, but I think the second that you meet this guy, you're just like, nah, not interested, because like he just seems like such a wreck. It's like, why would they even bother locking him up? Why it just to me it was. And I get why they're doing it. Like I get why the movie is doing it. It's because he's a character and he's a man's man and he's got skills and it's like, oh, it's got fucking Bryan Cranston in it too.
Yeah, crazy, by the way, that he's
Right.
in this.
Right. And it's like, it's not like it's got a bad cast, but I just feel like structurally it stopped me from being emotionally involved. And I think that really it all hinges on the beginning. And then there are changes I would make throughout. Yes, I would change the princess's introduction. I would maybe give her a little bit more to do. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with sort of like the main ingredients. I think it's the way that it's maybe told that doesn't work for me. So I would never say this is like a train wreck. I don't think it's a train wreck. I just think it's kind of boring and kind of been there, done that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things you're saying, I feel like they did from my perspective. I mean, mentioning, God, what did you just say? And it was like midway through what you were talking about, but basically introing him. You were talking about the introduction of the character.
Oh,
you
why
know,
they want him? Why do they
yeah,
want
why
him?
they want him. I mean, they did that. They checked that box. I thought thoroughly. I mean,
mean,
the whole thing was he comes in and says, hey, we've got this book on you that you're like the most badass dude ever. We're having huge problems. We need you right now, and I'm having a hard time seeing what's in this book
Right,
in front of me. So
right. It's
not only do
right,
they explain that, but he acknowledges it specifically that
right.
this guy in front of him looks like a piece of shit, right?
Right, yeah, and I'm not arguing that. What I'm saying is that to me, once they got him locked up, it was kind of like, why even lock him up at this point? Because he clearly is not the guy that you thought he was, and to get a guy that feels like was it worth it? Is it worth it? It doesn't seem like it's worth it. To me, it seems like they're going through all this effort. Why? He
Yeah.
just doesn't seem like he's worth it at this point. Now
I
I
mean,
get
I
the
think the
idea
whole
because they want as a movie to hammer home the whole like he's a desired warrior and he
right.
doesn't want to have any part in war anymore.
Yep.
Got
And
it. I,
and
I
to
would love.
me,
I kind of wish that they actually tied that to like a guilt about war, not just about his family dying, but maybe his actions within the war. I think would make because it's like okay, you don't want to go to war because your family died, but okay, so now your family's gone. So do you have a reason to not want to go to war now? Like, what is it about war specifically now that you don't like? And I think that would have been an interest. I personally, I just love the tortured, guilty soldier
sure.
angle. Sure, it's tired and it's been done before, but I felt like John could have used a little bit more than my wife and child are dead and I'm sad.
See, I would say that if this was a different kind of movie. This is an adventure movie. It's
Sure.
fun throwback kind of serial adventure movie, like something you'd have seen in like the 50s or whatever. Kind of like Star Wars, duh.
Yeah.
But Star Wars is a lot deeper with its themes, admittedly. Although the first one wasn't quite that, it wasn't nearly as deep as its themes until it got through all three, and then it was something else. So we'll never see that, unfortunately, for fans of the movie. I do want to talk about the Lynn Collins character, Deja, though, because, it sounds like you don't like Deja, and I actually think that their romance works incredibly well in this. I believe it the whole way through, and to me, that's not easy to do. Like I compare it with something like the Alita romance with the guy in Alita. I don't buy that at all. It feels crappy to me. That feels more Twilighty to me. This one feels more like a Disney princess type romance story, and I thought it was effective. It made sense to me.
They had
I think she's good.
moments. They had moments where I kind of bought it, but I'd say on the whole, it feels a little contrived. I don't think they have great chemistry. I think I understand it because I'm like, okay, attractive woman, attractive guy. I mean, you see Taylor Kitsch without a shirt on, you're like, fuck, I wish I looked like that dude.
I think he's a
But
little ratty looking, to be honest.
dude,
But
he's ripped as fuck, man. You would kill to have
I
those fucking abs.
I feel like I know where you're going with this, and it's like the Padme Anakin thing, but I don't think that's fair. I think there's a lot more going on here than just
to
two
me,
good looking people.
to me it just that's all it really feels like when they go to like the temple and they're like really close to each other. It's like I get it, you guys are both hot, and that's about it. You're in close proximity and you're all touching each other, touching hands, whatever. It's like I get it, you're both good looking people and you can't sleep with the green people because they got forearms and you're racist.
Yeah, if you don't sleep with the green forearm people, you're racist. This is just the kind of dialogue we need during these trying times.
No,
but
I knew that would get you.
I disagree with the idea that it is. I think they play it up well. It has a nice romantic ending. He wants to get back to her. I buy it. I feel bad for him when he gets sent back to the Earth. I mean, it's not like I hate sand, it's everywhere type bullshit that George Lucas was doing in the prequels, right?
And maybe this is actually this is very Thor-like, but I think that if we had spent, I think if you told the story about like you don't do the Edgar Rice Burroughs thing at the beginning, none of that. It's just basically you keep the same runtime, but you basically start with the idea of like starting out with John Carter when he's looking for the gold or whatever. And you start with him there, but you just sort of flesh everything out, a little bit more time with the romance, a little bit more time, and then it ends with he gets sent back to Earth. And it's very much your Thor ending of like, I'm going to get back to you. I do think there's something inherently romantic about two people separated by means beyond, or by methods beyond their means, and the desire to reunite. I think that's very romantic. But I did not, and I actually really love the idea. I mean, you're literally worlds apart, literally.
Yes.
I just the execution, I just don't feel it. And I think that's probably my reason why.
All right. Well, transitioning this into another aspect of the movie that I'm interested in your take on, because I think it works. But I can see people not liking it, is the whole Thurns thing, Mark Strong's character, the villains, what are their motivations, that sort of thing. Does that aspect of this movie work for you?
You cut out for me there. What was that?
Oh, boy. Transitioning into the other part of this, which is the villains of the movie. I feel like there is a reasonable argument to be made that they're underdeveloped. You don't really ever know what their true motivation is, that sort of thing. But what do you think of the villains in this, the Thurns and Mark Strong in particular?
I mean, they're just kind of generic bad guys. Yeah, you don't really know what's going on with them. I mean, I lump them in with the whole Red Martian race thing. It's just a part of the movie that the movie seems almost disinterested in itself with. And I think that is also a problem because you really have three sides to this thing, but I don't know what everybody wants. Actually, you've got four because you got Helium and then you've got the other dude with the blasty thing on his arm.
The Zodangans,
whatever the fuck. And then you've got the green dudes, and then you've got these white monk fuckers.
Sure.
And then you got John Carter, and it's like there's so much going on that I actually don't know what anybody's fighting for other than Mars.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of what so first off, I think that the Thurns were planned to be explained far more in subsequent movies. That's my theory. There is one great scene with Mark Strong, though, and I actually love the fucking scene. It's one of my favorite scenes of the movie, is when he essentially like hooks that thing up to John Carter. He has control of him, and he kind of does the Bond villain exposition thing. The bad guy explains what they're doing thing.
Right.
Yeah,
that bit.
I love that bit. I love when he takes him up and kind of overlooks and he's like, we've been doing this since before the birth of your world, and essentially,
I forgot about that.
society's grow.
Ideas.
Yes, right.
It's an interesting idea. I don't know why.
So I think that's the point that maybe you're missing, maybe not, is that the reason they're fighting it's not real. It's created, right?
Sure.
So that's interesting to me.
I completely forgot about that scene, to be honest, which I think actually speaks to just the movie itself, which is I forget large chunks of it because there are just large chunks because it's just boring to me. And so when something's boring, it's very hard to retain a lot of it. Like the scene where, they go out and it's the Willem Dafoe's daughter, and it's Princess Boring, and it's John Carter, and they go out to the temple-y thing or whatever.
I like that.
It's just boring. It's just boring.
It's great.
Just boring and boring and boring. You know what?
Hold on.
I tell you what I love though. I love the Colosseum scene.
Okay.
I'm always down for a good fight scene. One of the coolest scenes in the movie. I did love the scene. Well, not love, but I liked the scene where he takes on that whole horde of dudes. That was great. One thing and this is just a nitpick. You can obviously
slaughter you
for this. Yeah. But for me, I have a problem with, so John Carter is strong because his bones are dense, his muscles are denser. He's just used to a heavier gravity, so he can jump really far. They don't tend to use that in the most logical way all the time. He's having a fight with the main villain, like a sword fight, and it's kind of like the second that John shoves his arm up to block the sword, that should send that dude's arm flying back. That should, do you get what I'm saying?
You're not wrong.
I know that you can let it go because you like the movie, but for me, it just It's like,
Well,
what the fuck is even happening here?
you
Like, can
could
we
do
be
that-
consistent, please?
You could do that with so many, like a ton of the Marvel movies. You could do that kind
I,
of shit with.
trust me, I have problems with it when the
Yeah.
Marvel movies are not consistent.
I mean,
Because
you're not wrong. It's like, do you make sure that it is logical at the expense of the excitement in your movie? That, I guess
I
that's
think
the
you could still have it be exciting,
both.
but you just have to not have it be a one-on-one sword fight, because that's not a challenge for John, because he's just that much stronger than everybody.
Sure.
It's got to be like a massive fight that he's taking on like 20 dudes or something, because that's a little bit more realistic for his skill set at this point in the movie.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Now I like the river scene. I like the little bit in there with the three Tharks that are just going down silently down the river, basically to their deaths. I think that that's fantastic.
Okay.
I like the world building of the River Is and all that shit. The ending of the movie, I guess, if we want to get into that, that's pretty stock. Admittedly,
Yeah.
it's he's got to get there just before they get married, otherwise the villain kills everybody. Yeah, I mean, I that's fine to me. That's fine.
Yeah.
I love this fucking movie. I can't get enough of it. When I watched it, I'm like, shit, what the hell have I been doing? This should be an annual watch, at least for me. I hadn't watched it in a few years. So
you said it's an A+. I'll give it like a C. I think this
Okay.
is going to be one of our more disparate reviews.
Sure.
I really don't think it's horrible. I've seen far worse movies.
Oh, yes.
Trust me.
Well, like I said, the idea that this is like, if this is why Andrew Stanton isn't getting director's work, I get it. It was an expensive movie and it bombed, but
I
it
think that's the
certainly
real
isn't
reason.
all on. I know, but it wasn't on him, really. I mean,
No, but that Hollywood doesn't always see those things.
yeah,
you
that's
know?
true. Yeah, and he's a talented dude, man. All those
Oh, yeah.
all those
Oh, yeah.
Pixar movies, shit.
Yep.
I
I
But
agree.
yeah, let's talk about Akira. So this is your thing, and can I start this by trying to give you what I think the plot was?
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
how I'm going to start this. First off, I'm going to say the movie looks great. It's an anime movie from the late 80s. It looks awesome. It's like that. It's that 80s style animation, but it's probably done in the slickest, coolest way that I've ever seen, honestly. But I think the movie is about, I think that like during World War III, Japan set off a bomb of some sort on their own soil to hide or destroy a experimental child / weapon. And 20 or 30 years later, they're running these experiments again on other children, kind of trying to recapture that, I think. And then there are biker gangs, and essentially one of the kids in one of the biker gangs gets wrapped up in this, and he kind of turns into the I feel like this is like an anime trope, like that type of character, like the former friend, you know what I mean, who
Yes.
kind of turns a little evil, but it's not really his fault type deal. But yes, then basically it is. That's where and I don't even know if I got that right, but that was where it completely went off the rails as far as me trying to follow it. Honestly, maybe I'm an idiot. I felt like I had no idea what was going on.
I think it's a little hard to follow because the movie is almost more interested in atmosphere than actually explanation. Sometimes it does not hold your hand at all.
Yes, and it's
You are-
frustrating as a viewer because I was watching it like, God damn, all this shit looks amazing, but I'm not sure what the hell's going on. Like, you've got these
Yeah.
weird little zombie kids that are
So
fucking cool as hell looking.
I'm gonna correct your synopsis. So basically, the idea is that they actually do have a child that is a psychic weapon. He actually blows up Tokyo. It's not that they tried to kill him. He literally he was the explosion. He did that. What's up?
Got it. So their
Okay.
creation killed Tokyo, right? Is what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yeah, so he killed Tokyo, and the other kids were actually part of the initial sort of project. which is, and then World War III happens, which is why I think that they look like kids, yet they look like old people at the same time, because I think they've aged. So that's what happens, and then basically the idea is that this kid, this
Yes.
Tetsuo, sorry, Tetsuo. He runs into one of the psychic kids, and through this contact starts getting the psychic powers that Akira once had, and they sort of show you that like Akira's sort of like they have like a wavelength sort of thing, like that doctor shows you, and he's like, oh, this is Akira's wavelength, and then they overlay Tetsuo's, and it's like the inverse. It's like the exact opposite wavelength. So it's kind of like Akira is Tetsuo is Akira's sort of inverse.
Sure.
And so he's got a very similar level of power, just different. And then, yes, then shit just goes batshit crazy because Tetsuo goes nuts. There's riots in the streets, and clearly it seems like Akira is some sort of like a messianic figure sort of in this world. Like there are people who are like praying to Akira and stuff. And I think it's the idea. What I can gather is that the Japanese government tried to cover up Akira, but the people found out about it somehow. They found out that he was the cause for World War III, and because of that, he's got this like cult-like following.
Okay.
And so once they see this kid with psychic powers, they're like, oh, it's the second coming of Akira, and they follow him. And then basically he's like, I want to meet Akira. I want to meet this fucking guy. He finds the remains of Akira, which are just in jars because they're like, well, we have to study this fucking kid.
Right.
And then basically Tetsuo cannot contain his power. And then this is such an anime ending. Then the other three psychic kids basically rejoin with Akira, who basically, as far as I can figure it, has moved beyond the need for a physical body, which is why he created like a massive explosion. Because that wasn't Tetsuo who did that massive explosion. Because all of a sudden Akira shows up, and then they're like, oh, Akira, you're back. And then massive explosion. And yeah, then the movie ends.
Okay,
And,
so hold on now. So now Pinky's Out podcast is in the chat here.
Sure.
And he's got some opinions on the movie. So he loves the movie. He says it's very complicated.
Very complicated.
He says they look like children from the drugs that enhance their powers. It stopped them from going into puberty. And then he says that Akira's cells are trying to recombine, then they ascend. So that is his view.
Pinky, is this based on the manga? Did you read the manga, or is this just like things that you've read online, like people's like fan theories or whatnot?
Yeah, and I would love to hear it because one thing you'll know about Ken from Pinky's Out podcast, if you ever watch our Downright Annoyed show, is he is big. Like we watched Patton last week, and he says like after he watches something like Patton or Ip Man, he spends the next 2 or 3 hours just looking up,
looking it up. Okay,
but he's claiming here that this is just from the movie.
From the movie. Okay, so these are things that, because I don't think all of this is necessarily explicitly said in the movie. I think some of it is either inferred or like director's commentary or writer's commentary, stuff like that. I think you probably need extra texts to find out all of that. I mean, because there's stuff in there like the idea, and we haven't even gotten into the review yet, but the which is, I guess, maybe part of the review is that this movie is so complicated.
Yes,
that,
it's going to be one of my detriments against the movie, like one of the things against the movie that I have. But
and I love the movie because I want to say my thing about like something else that we've actually skipped over entirely, which is they talk about sort of like the power that Akira has and sort of like the origin of it, and like it's the idea that maybe this power existed all along, like, and they, like that conversation between the girl and Kaneda when they're in the cell. And
I don't like when you say it like that. You need to say it as Canada, Canada. The whole movie, every time they say it, almost.
Oh God, I love it. So they have that conversation, and she's talking about like the idea of like what happens if an amoeba gets the power of a human. He would be perceived as a god, but he doesn't know anything other than what it's like to live as an amoeba, so he would just do what an amoeba does, but with the power of a human, which would make him incredibly destructive. And it's kind of like the inversion, or the thing you're supposed to infer from that is that that's basically what Tetsuo is like he's got a power of a god. But then like they talk about like the idea, like the doctor at the very end, he's like, if I'm seeing this right, this is like the birth of a universe or the beginning of the universe. I don't know exactly how well that translated from Japanese. Maybe he's saying like, this is the energy that we think existed for the Big Bang or whatever. But I think the idea is that Akira and, well, basically like Akira is basically saying like, look, we shouldn't be here. Our powers are not meant to be on this plane. We don't like this is not, we are now above this human form, this human realm. We shouldn't be here. So maybe he either creates a new universe or sends them out to a different universe where they're separate from us.
Sure. Okay.
That's sort of what I got from it.
Yeah, well, and I like all that. It's not something that I will count ever watching again, because I kind of understood, even though I didn't know what the hell was going on, I kind of understood why it would have a big following just from how it looked. And
it's beautiful.
And you can tell there's themes in there.
Yes.
And there's serious stuff in there. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I really, really loved the first 15 minutes or so. I thought the opening, the whole
bike
getting
chase sequence is
it's in my opinion, through the whole thing, there's nothing, and obviously maybe it's because I don't have anything to emotionally grab onto, but throughout the whole movie, I think that's the best part of the movie. I mean,
it's one of my favorite parts for sure. And I would say, like, if I were to do a detriment to this movie, which I love this movie, but I'm able to see its flaws. I think the problem is that it's a little hard to get attached to Tetsuo and Kaneda because we don't necessarily, we understand their dynamic with each other, but we don't, we sort of get to learn a little bit, like they clearly seem like orphans. There appears to be no parents for them whatsoever. And I think that's intentional.
right.
But like, I don't know what drives Kaneda. And I sort of get what drives Tetsuo. Like he's clearly got an inferiority complex and he's got rage issues and all of these things. And I get him, but Kaneda is kind of like he seems like he's just sort of like a freewheeling kind of kid. Like it doesn't seem like a whole lot bothers him. And so like he's kind of missing an arc a little bit. Or maybe not. I mean, I guess maybe you could say he's an irresponsible a bike member, gang member to a socially conscious kid who like is trying to save the city.
I guess that's where I would go with it. I think he's just meant to represent like an irresponsible teenager, like the way he interacts with the girl when he first meets her, right?
Yeah.
He's just, that's what he's obsessed with, right? That's like his.
Oh my god! And it's so 80s, and it is so not woke. When he goes like, what does he say? He's like, you can at least give me your name, you cold-hearted bitch. It's like, wow, dude, weren't you just flirting with her like 15 seconds ago?
Yes.
But I mean, he's an immature fucking kid. I mean, it makes sense.
You mean to tell me, Homb, that men kind of put on a front and an act when they first introduce themselves to women? No.
Yeah, and I definitely think it's more prevalent when you're younger too. I think the act is bigger when you're younger than when
eventually
you're
you stop giving a shit. Really, is kind of what it boils down to.
You become mature enough to know that if they're gonna like you, they're gonna like you for who you are.
Yeah, they're gonna find out who you are eventually, right?
Yeah,
I mean that's kind of the deal. So yeah,
exactly.
But sorry, continue.
So that's my main detriment, is that it's hard to get a little emotionally invested in this, but at the same time, this is a very heady movie. This is a movie with, like you said, it's immensely dense in themes, and I think it's one of those ones where I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about like the historical time that this was made and the country it's made and like the things that culture and those people value, or at least the writer values in that culture.
Sure.
I mean, to me, it felt very much. So, I mean, you think about like, so this was written in the 80s, and Japan, like post World War II, like Japan had really changed, obviously, and had sort of embraced a little bit more of a capitalistic nature. It was all of a sudden, and especially in the 80s, was sort of like the electronics boom for Japan. Like all of a sudden, it's got like all of this power as far as like the amount of money that they're now wielding.
Right.
And I think there's a clear focus in this movie on the idea of like, are we losing ourselves to capitalism? Are we losing ourselves? And I think the whole thing actually revolves around that, because I think you actually look at the kids, they don't have parents, they don't have structure, they don't have like these traditional Japanese values. They're not raised in it. They're just raised in this fucking wasteland of a city with warring factions and fascist police and you know, covert ops going on in the military, and people who are just trying to become rich, like that. There's like a character in it who's just seems like he's just using like the freedom fighters to like distract the military so he can gain financially from it. I don't know. To me, it seems like that's to me. I think it's the idea of like, at least if I'm really taking it to its most logical conclusion, I think the idea of Kaneda, or not Kaneda, but Tetsuo, is like he is this child who is given, and it's almost like the children who would be raised in the 80s would be raised in this culture of immense power that Japan now wields on the economic scale. But it's also a child that's been raised without traditional values. And it's like, is this what our legacy is? Is this what we're going to impart on the world? Are we going to are we as a culture going to make the world worse because we've lost our way as a society because of all these new changes in it? So I think it's very much a cautionary tale in that regard.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, he literally has an electronic arm at the end, and the electronics literally just start, and his own power
Taking him
literally
over.
starts taking him over. So I mean, I think it's, I don't think it's unfair to make that logical leap.
I wish to holy hell that I would have gotten all of that out of watching this. I really do, because the parts that I liked so much. Just I wasn't bored watching it. The experience of watching the movie was great. I did start getting frustrated. You know, like there's a scene towards the end, and it was funny because there's like, I knew I had seen the character in an earlier scene, and I was just completely had forgotten the context at which I had seen him. It was the old guy with that's trying to pack all the money or whatever into the suitcase and run away. And during that part, I'm like, okay, I'm officially lost. I don't know who this is. I don't know what he did. I don't know his role in all this. I'm assuming he's either a corporate or government shill who is doing something for greedy purposes, but I really don't know. And I'm frustrated that I don't know. And I don't know if it's my fault that I don't know, or if the movie just kind of...
He was established earlier on. I think he was in like 2 scenes, maybe 3 scenes before that. Basically, he was at like one of like the government council.
Yeah.
Me think that the military guy, like if this was an American movie, the military guy would be like this horrible figure. But I actually almost think that almost nobody in this movie kind of comes out looking like a hero. I guess basically none of the adults. Well, and then they also talk about like the idea like, you're a big person, you think like an adult. You shouldn't have this power. And maybe it's the idea that power for adults is crippling. I don't know.
Sure.
Like too much power, I guess. But I think all of the adult characters are kind of pieces of shit.
Sure. I like the Colonel, but...
That's the thing, is I think if this was an American movie, the Colonel probably would be the bad guy, I think.
Yeah, and he's not. I didn't see
fascist.
him that way at all. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you kind of saw him as like this guy trying to like, clearly this fucking society is fucking rotting. It's
right.
Riots everywhere. Police just kill. Like, I mean, to me, I was like, Jesus Christ, this feels very apt for me to be watching right now.
Well, it was funny. When it first opened, I'm like, holy shit, how did we pick this before? How the hell did we pick this? Because it felt ridiculous. How
it's like
I'm
right
like, oh,
outside.
Jesus, I can't even turn on Akira and get away from it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's there, and it's like, but I mean, I'll tell you what, I love the violence in this thing. I love the violence.
Oh yeah, it's badass.
It's fucking brutal.
Yes,
it's a
it's
fucking
awesome.
brutal movie. And the body horror at the end. Oh
It
my
is
God.
very body horror-esque. It is very what's his name? The Fly. Oh God, what's his name?
My God.
Uh,
Now I'm
the
blanking on it.
the director, Cronenberg.
Cronenberg. Yes.
Cronenberg-esque.
Yep.
Yes. Yes, it's very
Yeah.
disgusting. I liked it. I liked the
Yeah. I
ending,
love.
even though I have
I
no fucking clue what the hell was happening. But
Well, and I love the fact that Tetsuo, when he's got his power and he's got like this following of like these people who think he's this messianic figure, he's so irresponsible. He doesn't give a fuck about them. He on the bridge, he like kills as many of them as he does the fucking military. Like
do
he
you
doesn't fucking care.
do you see this as like a more modern day version of what Japan did with Godzilla? Like, do you compare the two? Because from what you're describing and kind of the way the movie plays out, there's a little bit of that be wary of too much power and, weaponry and all that shit going on in this too, and Japanese culture at the time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think they're similar in that Godzilla is very much like a reaction to World War II. And
Yep.
this is still very much, and it's still very much World War II reactionary. I mean, the imagery alone at the beginning, it invites the comparison to the atomic bombs being dropped.
Correct. Yep.
And so I think you'd be remiss if you don't notice that.
Yeah.
I think it's just sort of like this is where our society. I think it's just a further removed. Like this is where we are now, dealing with that thing, and then dealing with what we did to our society after that, and seeing the problems that are there present. I found it's I think it's probably one of the best looking animated movies I've ever seen in my life.
The first
Every
15 minutes are incredible looking. Like the
it's
the way the buildings are drawn and
Yep.
the backgrounds in these, you always have like the still backgrounds and you're kind of animating the characters on top of it. But the
Yes.
way they move it all around and it just looks so slick. It really
They
does.
clearly had like 4 or 5 paintings because the buildings are moving.
Yes.
And it's just
fucking great. Yeah.
it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I think like visually it's an absolute masterpiece. And I think what it's saying societally is very interesting. And I don't think I don't think I fully understand it because I'm not Japanese. I haven't been immersed in that culture enough to fully get everything and get all of the references.
Sure.
But I find it to be interesting. And yeah, doing a live action movie of this,
I was just gonna say. I
Yeah.
was just gonna say. How? What do you think? I mean, now I understand why one would be worried. And it was funny because I feel like and I did watch Ghost in the Shell the anime before I saw that movie.
Yeah.
And I have a sneaking suspicion. Unless who was the one that was gonna do this again?
Taika.
Taika. Okay, well maybe he can do a good job, but it's going to be tough, man. I
It's going to
don't.
be tough. It's going to be very tough. I don't think that you do it in one movie. Part of a little bit of backstory on this too. This movie was made before the manga was actually finished. This is like the third or fourth time I think I've brought that up on this show. And I think that it sort of shows in the ending because the ending feels a little rushed. It feels a little out of left field. And I guess I still like the ending, but I think this movie would be better. I think if you split it up and you spent a little bit more time with the characters. And I don't know what a logical game point is as far as the story. I don't know how you split this into 2 or 3, but I would love to spend more time with Kaneda and Tetsuo and understand them a little bit better.
Sure. Yeah. I think you just have to dumb down this movie, make it so the dummies like me can understand it. Now, then do you lose what the movie is? But
I think you absolutely do, and I think that's the problem with anime adaptations is they tend to dumb down the movies. Because I think that was the problem with Ghost in the Shell live action. It was so fucking dumb compared to the fucking movie or the TV shows.
Yeah, but
It
see,
was
then
insulting.
then you think of like Alita though, and it's like I'm
But
neither of
Alita's
us
not
had
very
read it.
complex.
Well, we did you read it? Do you know how much do you know about
I've
it?
seen a little bit of Alita.
Okay.
I've seen a little bit of it. It's to me it always seemed very basic. It's a battle anime. I mean, it's
Yeah,
Battle
okay.
Angel Alita. I mean, Dragon Ball Z is not complex. You could do the
True.
same thing with Dragon Ball Z. These big ones, Ghost in the Shell, Akira. There are other ones, but those are kind of I think like the big seminal two. Those require it to be a cerebral movie. If you if you veer away from that, you veer away from the core of the movie.
I feel like Ghost in the Shell tried to be, it just sucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember because I watched the anime, I think the day before we went and saw that. And I remember I don't remember sitting in the theater saying, oh my God, they left this part out, or oh my God, they didn't do this. I just remember feeling like it felt like that movie Ultraviolet with Mila Djokovic from like 20 years ago, like
Yeah.
that shitty style of movie where you just don't feel anything because you're just in a cartoon and it
Yeah.
feels like a cartoon and it sucks.
Yeah.
And that's not. I hope they do a good job with this because I will be really excited to see it just from the imagery that was in the movie, the anime movie. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, to me alone, like it's one of those things I will be excited to go to the world. It's one of those things I
yes,
just love the world. I love the imagery. Akira's bike is one of the coolest fucking designed bikes like ever. Like I just fucking love it. And I love how they do the light trails at the end.
yeah, it
It's
looks
so
great. Everything
fucking
they do with
cool.
the animation is great. But yeah, I'd give it like I'm gonna go with your John Carter grade, I guess, a C.
See?
But it's probably my fault, or maybe it's not my fault. Maybe I just need to see it more times, or
I
But
I think the first time I saw it, it blew me the fuck away.
Okay.
So I think the first time I saw it, it'd be like an A plus.
Okay.
Subsequent viewings, it's come down, and then the more I've looked into Japanese culture and what it means, it's come back up again. Like I think that's sacrilege in the anime community to say,
Okay.
but I don't think I still think it's a masterpiece as far as animation, but I think as far as like a singular story that got me emotionally involved, it is missing a little bit.
Perfect. All right. Well, I think that does it for the movie reviews. Anything that you watched in your final shit we watched segment?
Yeah. So I finished Erased. I don't think I talked about that on the last episode. It wasn't finished yet.
You talked about the show, but it wasn't you weren't finished. But is it good in
So
the end? Is it good?
it's only 12 episodes. I feel like this is a good investment for anybody's time as far as like anime. I also feel like this is one that will bridge the gap for people who like, I don't like anime. Watch this one. It's story based, it's character based. Also, the animation and the backgrounds are just beautiful. And it's a really well told story. It's fucking. I told you before. I told you I thought it had the potential to be an amazing anime. I really think. I mean, slight, tiny bit of faltering as far as pacing on the ending goes. But other than that, I think this is a fucking stellar. This is like a masterpiece. This is like an A. It's not an A plus because of a little bit of an issue near
I'm
the
not.
end.
I'm
But
not used to you dropping A's on these animes though on this show.
no,
So
most of them. No, I'd say the vast majority of animes that I've watched are not A's.
no.
This is a this is fucking great. This is fucking great. This is Death Note. This is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. This is The Promised Neverland. Neverland. This is fucking great. This is
Nice.
fucking great.
Nice.
So
Yeah,
that's my big watch.
That's all you got. Yeah,
That's
I
pretty
don't
much it.
really I don't really have anything that I can think of offhand. Oh, I did start a new HBO show last night. Um uh and I'm typing it in because I forgot the name of the show. I May Destroy You, it's called. It's about a English African American writer, and it's a half-hour show. Apparently, it was like a BBC show at first. HBO must have picked it up, but I was kind of interesting because I was trying to figure out what the show was about throughout the whole thing because it kind of just slowly introduces you to kind of the character, and she's seems to be a little bit of a mess. Like she's got a deadline for a book. She's obsessed with some guy that she's kind of dating in Italy. She has to fly back to the UK, and essentially that she owes a story the next day at 6 a.m. And she's up at night writing this story or whatever. And she decides like she's got writer's block. She's gonna go grab a drink. So she meets her friends out for a drink. Blacks out and shows up at this meeting the next day with like jack shit to turn in. And then right when it ends, you see her like she goes into her bedroom and she has a memory of like this dude that's like, having sex with her. So that was like a huge hook for the show, because now I understand what the show is about. And I'm assuming it's going to be the, you know, unconsensual sex. Yes, that's what I'm assuming. So it was really good, though. It was a really good show. Like, I really liked the main character. And I was immediately, within 5 or 10 minutes, I was like totally on board with all the style of the show, the music they were using. It was kind of funny. It clearly had like a message to say. But yeah, you went through this episode thinking like, oh, this is kind of a quirky, funny show, and then at the end, it was like, boom. So I'm very intrigued to watch a few more episodes and see if it keeps hooking me. So that would be my watch, I guess, this week. That would be my watch.
Start. I started Hannibal too.
Really? Okay. Yeah. How's that?
It's fun. I mean, Mads Mikkelsen is a fucking boss. So
love Mads. Yeah.
But the new character, sort of like, I think you're sort of audience identification character. He's good too. He's very good. Troubled. I guess you could say like a detective with Asperger's, I guess is probably like the best way of describing him. He can sort of envision, he has what I guess I think they call it universal empathy. So he can put himself in the mindset of anyone and understand anyone's point of view, and picture anything, basically.
So he's the Counselor Troy of Hannibal?
Sure. Yeah. I can. Yeah, it's good. I love Mads. I'm really excited to see where it goes.
I feel like I should watch that.
I
feel like I should watch that. Yeah, I just love him, and you know, I love the character of Hannibal Lecter. It's a great character. Exactly. You know, like even the Hannibal movie, which I thought kind of sucked, it's still entertaining just because of, you know, Hannibal as a character and some of the things going on. But yeah.
Well, Hannibal is just great because he's got that great dichotomy of like civilized but brutal.
Right. Yes.
It's so fascinating, and it's just intriguing to watch inherently.
And Mads is a great person to play Hannibal too. I would think.
I just want him to play some sort of big villain in a big successful movie, because he is so amazing. Like, he was so wasted in Doctor Strange. It's just sad.
Yeah, I would agree. Even if they want to cast him as a you know, a superhero or something, that would be cool.
Anything where he gets more spotlight, because he deserves all of the attention.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that everybody likes, you know.
Yes.
But yeah, you got anything else?
I mean, I've been watching some Let's Plays on video games.
Okay.
This game Kindergarten, I'm sure people are like, bro, you're like way behind. But there's
somebody's bored in quarantine.
No, it was a suggestion, and I've been thoroughly enjoying it, because it's about like this fucked up kindergarten where you keep reliving Monday, because you can get killed by the principal, you can get killed by the janitor, you can get killed by the teacher, you can get killed by other students, and it's one of these things where like you got to figure out the mysteries, and it's like this sort of like point and click sort of decision tree sort of story.
Okay,
and it
sounds fun.
It's very interesting. I highly would recommend it. I think it's very interesting and funny.
It's like Happy Death Day in kindergarten.
Yeah. But like cartoon little kids, you know.
Nice.
But it's fun.
Perfect.
It's fun.
But yeah,
very violent. But
that's violent kindergarten game.
Yes.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Well, before we say our goodbyes to Homb, I do have a small surprise for him quickly. A few other podcasters from the community did send me some well wishes here. So I'm going to go ahead and go through these. And if Homb has a message for any of these people, if he wants to tell them to fuck off or whatever he wants to do. Again, I was shocked that anyone cared or wanted to say goodbye to Homb, to be frank with you. So it was
surprised.
Nice of you guys to send these in.
I'm sincerely surprised.
But yeah, let's just go ahead and start with one of our most recognized voices from this show and friends of the show.
Hey Alex, it's Derek from Poolside Podcast. I just wanted to say I've really enjoyed listening to you and Jackson the past 2 years. You've helped shape my expectations and my own criticisms when it comes to movies and television, and I've always enjoyed your outburst when it comes to awful movies like The Meg. I hope you visit back on the show every now and then, and maybe we'll get to hear a visit from Warner also. That is, if he doesn't attack you again. I enjoyed getting to finally podcast with you and destroy the awful Fantastic Four movie, and I wish you the best in the things to come for you. Thanks again for the great podcast, and don't let anyone tell you to stop being a Marvel shill. See ya.
So yeah, thank you, Derek, for sending that in. Appreciate it.
That was
But,
lovely.
yeah. Anything to say to Derek?
That got me right in the feels, Derek. That was thank you. That was
Yeah,
really nice. And
you're
I will
kind-
never apologize for being a Marvel shill.
Well, you should apologize for leaving the Meg. I mean, that's the one you should apologize for. Because I mean, come on now. That might be. Is that the only movie you left during this whole series?
While we were recording, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So next, we have another couple friends of the show, and I will let them do their thing as well.
Hey, what's going on, Bored and Annoyed? This is your friends Mike and Riley from the Downright Nerdy podcast. And we wanted to say both congratulations on 100 episodes of Bored and Annoyed. We are huge fans.
Huge fans.
And we are sad to hear that Homb is leaving. We wanted to give you a congratulations and a good luck on your future endeavors, man. And hope you do come back for cameo appearances here and there.
Yeah, we'll miss you, but good for you.
Later, buddy.
Yeah, don't cry. Don't cry.
You guys
Homer
are getting
Floyd.
me, man.
Yeah, so we'll just go right into the next one. And thank you again, Michael. You can catch him with me every weekend on Downright Annoyed with Movies, as well as over at the Downright Nerdy podcast. So make sure you check him out. Another podcaster wanted to send something in here.
Hey, Bored and Annoyed. This is Jonathan with Silver Screen Video Podcast. Been a long-time listener of you guys, and I've really enjoyed it. And Jackson gave us the opportunity to kind of reach out and let Homb know that he will be missed by the podcast community, by the listeners. We really appreciate all the fun, creative content we've gotten since you guys started. And good luck on everything. Hope everything goes well for you. And please get back on Bored and Annoyed when you can so we can hear you guys go back and forth. And so it's been a pleasure listening to you, and it's been a great show. So good luck on everything, and I hope everything goes well for you. You guys take it easy.
There you go. Don't
You guys are
start
killing
crying.
me. You guys are
Are you
killing
getting
me.
killed here?
You're killing
Are you
me.
getting killed? Yeah.
Yeah.
Tears of sadness. So okay, then we're gonna give you. Okay, who do you think the last one is? I got one more. Who do you think it is?
I would love if it was Kova, but I don't think it's going to be Kova.
Okay, who else? Who else could it be?
It's got to be Steve, right? It's got to be Spoiler Steve, right? Maybe not.
Hey guys, Spoiler Steve here, Caveman Edition, as you can see. Alex, just want to wish you the best of luck. It's sad to hear that you're leaving. Big fan of you and Jackson and Bored and Annoyed and the community that you guys have created. So just want to wish you the best of luck, and can't wait to hear what your new project is, and need to have you back on soon.
Yeah. So there you go. You will be missed. I don't know
Steve,
why.
I love the beard. I
Yeah,
love
it's
the
pretty.
beard.
He yeah, it looks pretty good. It's funny seeing Steve in the flesh, right? Because
Yeah.
I've got my I know I'm friends with him on Facebook and everything, but I feel like he's had kind of a cartoon picture or something up most of the time, or I haven't gotten a good look at him.
Yes.
So when he sent that, I'm like, oh, probably not what I would have guessed he looked like, which is always an
Definitely
interesting
not what I
experience.
thought he looked. I
Yes.
thought he was like clean shaven, like
Yeah.
smaller guy for some reason.
Yeah, Steve, we didn't think you looked like, such a homeless person or something. You know what I mean? We thought
was
you had
gonna
a
say, like,
suit on, we thought you had a tuxedo or something, but
I thought
no,
he was like
Steve is,
he looks like a badass Viking to me.
that's where I was going with this. He really does look like we need to get him a horned helmet and like a badass axe or something. But yes, Steve, thank you so much. And we really appreciate everyone who supported the show, by the way. I know Homb does. So Homb, I guess leaving the floor to you, if you can stop yourself from crying here. What do you have to say to kind of say goodbye to our listeners?
God, I guess I should have prepared something. I don't
That
know.
would not be. That would not.
That would
be
not
right.
be this show. Yeah,
No.
no, you're right. That would not be this show. God, I mean, it has been great hearing all, it's been great meeting new people. I think that was maybe the greatest thing about this. I loved guesting on other podcasts. I love talking to other new people. It was nice to, every now and then get somebody who was like, Alex, you're not completely insane. And Jackson is a jackass for fucking disagreeing with you. But it's goddamn, it's now you're making me second guess this, which is I didn't know it was going to be this hard, I guess is
Hey,
the big thing.
I mean, I'm assuming you're probably going to want to get some dark talk off your chest here in a couple weeks. So clearly, if you want to hop on and talk about that, obviously you can. So that's not a problem. Now, what's been interesting, Home, and I, to kind of, those of you who have spoken to us on social media know that I kind of run the social media aspect of this. What is very interesting is how the complaints about our takes on stuff have been reasonably even when we disagree on something. You know
Really?
what I mean? Yes. I feel like I've been called an asshole more, just because of my opinions on certain things being assholish and my tact not being the greatest. But in general, like for the Meg, you had people that were like, God, he was really harsh on that. Or for what was the latest one? I had messages on the Harley Quinn movie that were both ways. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you really do start to learn that this, we think that this is we think that there are such things as objectively bad films, but the fact that you can disagree on which ones are kind of mean we're wrong. And that's what's interesting about the whole movie criticism thought process.
What's interesting to me, and I'm much more comfortable talking about things like this than my own feelings about leaving. But what's interesting to me is your feelings. There's like a Buddhist quote that your thoughts aren't your own, and it's the idea that your thoughts can fluctuate on your mood, on how much you've slept, on your mental state about what kind of stresses you're under right now. There could be a feasible day where I got laid and maybe I was a little drunk and I go and see the Meg and I'm like, this fucking shit is dope. I could have that.
It's very true. Yes.
So,
very
I
true.
mean, yeah, that's something I think to keep in mind always. But I mean, there are always going to be movies that I'll always love, I think, no matter how my mindset.
Yeah. And I just want to say my parting words to you would be, I think the way this kind of started, I think probably you had brought up the idea of doing this probably months before you actually texted me and said, you know what, let's fucking do it. Right.
Sure.
So thank you for doing that, because I never, I don't know if there's anybody else in town that I could have done this with. I can't imagine talking movies like we have with anyone else that I know around here, really. We've had it hasn't all been perfect. We've had disagreements throughout the process of doing this show. But I think that that's kind of just part of having a working relationship with someone, especially when it's kind of a 50-50 partnership. And certain people are going to be more into it for weeks at a time than other people are. And that's gone both ways throughout this entire thing. I think you would agree, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, there are weeks where you're on, and there are weeks where I'm on, and
Yes.
and it's just it fluctuates. It fluctuates.
So my message is thank you for being a part of this journey with me, and you're always welcome to join back in. Obviously, this is a sad day. I mean, it really is a sad day. It's not a happy moment. So
I don't even know why I want to do this. I feel like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I feel guilty about leaving now. But I did not know that this mattered to anyone, really. And so seeing stuff like that, that actually really does genuinely really touch me. And that was really, really nice. But I think the thing that I realized about myself is like, I think a lot of people know, like, I'm an artist. I like to draw. But I've also been trying to be a writer for a while. And what I've realized about myself is that I have a really hard time writing when I spend a lot of time watching other people's things. I don't know. I don't know who said this. I think it might have been Kevin Smith. I don't know, but he's like, no, man, like I'm in the tank. Like I can't watch stuff while I'm like writing. And it's like, I think I'm kind of the same way. So like right now I have these projects that I'm working on as far as like, I'm working on comics. Like it's not a secret. And I just know like if I do this and I'm like, hey, we're going to watch this movie and we're going to watch this. And like, I just know I'm never going to get it done. Like I'll just never get it done.
Yeah, just know that if you want to talk about a movie that comes out once movies start coming out, don't come to me, man. I don't want to talk to you about it anymore. That's gone.
And on that note,
that avenue's gone. But no, thank you so much for to the audience that supported us, and I will let Homb or Alex kind of play out the show here. So I'm gonna let him sign off.
so I have been home at the movies. This has been Bored and Annoyed.
Oh, you're doing the whole thing. See, I fucked it up. I've been Jackson, by the way.
He's been
I fucked
Jackson.
the whole thing up.
It's
Can't
right
just
there
let
in
you have the spotlight.
It's my fucking signing off, motherfucker. Yeah, no, I have been home at the movies. This has been Bored and Annoyed. And it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.